Finally, we're getting to Rahu and Ketu conjunct planets. Usually when an astrologer sees a chart and they see a planets with Rahu or Ketu, they're going to jump on that right away and make a big deal of it. But I didn't start with the planets for a reason, and the reason is because ultimately what we're trying to do is get in touch with the signs of Rahu and Ketu through the gateway of the house. And the planets that are there are going to sort of put more energy into that happening. Okay, so planets with Rahu are always going to put more energy towards the Rahu house and the Rahu sign to try to make that connection come together. Planets with Ketu are always going to put more stress on Ketu to resolve the things of its sign via the house it's in. So when you see planets conjunct Rahu and Ketu, consider that the need to work out the Rahu and Ketu is greater. Okay, there's simply more energy going there. Now, as you'll remember, in the last video I talked about the jungle half and the castle half of the chart. One half has Rahu and the other half has Ketu. I talked about how the important planet is the closest planet to Rahu and Ketu. So it's the same thing. When I say conjunction, I might say conjunction, I might say close to. I don't know what I'm going to say, because with my Mercury I don't always get to choose my words. So when I say those things, I'm meaning basically the planet closest to Rahu and Ketu, or planets that are close to them. So basically, the closer a planet is to Rahu, the more the Rahu influence it has. The closer it is to Ketu, the more the Ketu influence it has. Okay. And if planets are like, far away from Rahu and Ketu, around that 90-degree point, and really going 30 degrees in any direction, you can say, from that 90-degree point, the influence of Rahu and Ketu is going to be very minimal, and you don't have to really consider that in the context of a Rahu-Ketu influence, okay? But everything else considered to have some influence. So basically, as I mentioned, a planet with Rahu is going to push a person into the Rahu house more. But so, I've also mentioned in the last video, any planet on the Rahu side of the chart is going to push the person, draw the person, motivate the person to go into the Rahu house and the Rahu sign. In the same way, any planet conjunct Ketu or any planet on the Ketu side of the chart is going to draw the person, motivate the person towards their Ketu house and Ketu sign. Okay? And if a person's motivated towards their Ketu house and Ketu sign, it's not a bad thing. It's simply showing that in this lifetime, more of their karmas, more of the things they need to resolve and complete and work out have to do with the Ketu side of the chart. Okay? And it's not that they're failing by not going to the Rahu side of the chart, it's just that they have to spend time in the Ketu castle more. As that Ketu castle gets more developed, there's a point where we're ready to leave it, but not until then. And sometimes people are really ready to leave it, and other times, in this lifetime, they're not really ever going to be really ready to leave the Ketu castle completely. They're just meant to do a lot of work in that Ketu castle part of the chart this lifetime. And perhaps for a future lifetime, they'll be moving into the Rahu side of the chart. Okay? Alright, so a couple principles. First of all, I talked about the effects of Rahu and Ketu conjunct every planet in the Mastering Rahu and Ketu course. Okay, I like those interpretations. I did those interpretations several years ago. I used those same interpretations for as long as I can really remember. Those are interpretations I worked with since I've been doing Vedic astrology, really. I mean, really, even before that, I started working with the basics of those interpretations. I still use those interpretations. Those are good interpretations. They've served me well for really, a long time, over 25 years, okay? So yes, review that course. If you haven't taken it already, take it, and use those interpretations. I don't want to reiterate everything I talked about in those videos. You can just go look at those. In this course, I want to talk about conjunctions or closeness of planets to Rahu and Ketu in a different way that will allow you to use what you know about the planets to kind of come up with your own interpretations on the fly as the need of the individual client that's in front of you requires, okay? I like techniques. I like a way, a methodology to something so that, the need of the client helps you work with that method in a way that really is customized to their need, okay? So a couple principles. First of all, Ketu is a black gem, Rahu is a gray gem. One of the few things we're told by Parashara about Rahu and Ketu. I think it was Parashara. So Ketu is a black gem, Rahu is a gray gem. Well, first of all, they're gems. Okay, that's kind of nice, okay, to know that there's some gems, there's something good here. So there's a valuable thing in the Ketu and the Ketu experiences. And there's a valuable thing in the Rahu and the Rahu experiences because they're gems. And a gem is basically a symbol of value. So this is why we want to work through these houses, because there's something of value there. Okay, a gem, I think a gem is a symbol of the spirit that wants to reveal itself. And as I've always talked about, I think I talked about this in the Lajitadi Avasthas, the Heart of Parashara course, talked about how I see humanity is that the same way the earth is formed. You know, first it's this plasma starts cooling until it becomes a liquid heated mass. As that liquid heated mass begins to cool, crystals, which are gems, start growing out of that molten mass. At different temperatures, different gemstones grow. Then there's remaining minerals that is, you know, in that molten mass, and as those minerals cool, different gems grow, and so on. And that's how we literally the surface of the earth is created upon which we live. And eventually the molten mass that's in the core of the earth will be completely cooled and all be minerals, all be gems of some type. So the process of earth itself is a cooling process upon which, you know, energy, which is heat, cools to become gems. And the gems emerge out of this molten mass of just death and destruction and where nothing can live. And humanity follows that same pattern because earth is nothing more than a symbol of humanity, basically. Okay, because it's all the same consciousness that's creating the growth of earth, that's creating the growth of humanity, and that's creating the growth of the individual. So as humanity, we're literally growing out of the molten mass of humanity, you know, out of the destruction of humanity. Think of humanity, think about it, you know, the terrible things that happen, the wars, the rapes, the abuse, the family structures, the things people who, you know, the things people do to their parents, children, things people do to their friends, things people do to their spouses. And you see this thing and you realize it's really quite a horrible thing where life can barely exist. It's literally, I think, symbolized quite well by this idea of a molten mass of heat, you know, that just wants to burn. Everyone's burning everybody, right? People are taken for everyone. They're hungry. They're burning them. The fire element gives hunger that makes you want to take and have, you know. And we really see this fire element just so out of control in the selfishness and the take and have. Everyone's trying to fulfill their hunger at huge cost to the life around them. And that's the symbolic of this molten mass. It's just going to burn and just going to burn. But over time, which means over evolution, this molten mass begins to cool. And as it cools, gems begin to emerge. And I feel like each of us is an emerging gem. We're all growing out of this molten mass of fiery, hungry, devouring humanity, you know, and we're growing out of this. And it's each of our duties and responsibilities to grow into the most beautiful gem that we can grow into. And, you know, we come out of these backgrounds. Everyone here has a story. Everyone who's learning astrology is trying to grow into the most beautiful gem they can out of this mass. And all of you have your stories about, you know, the tragic events in your life, the unfair events, basically the encountering of this molten mass that you are trying to emerge out of as a crystalline, beautiful expression of the divine eventually as we continue onward here. And here Parashara is telling us that Rahu and Ketu are gems. Yes, it's a black gem, and yes, it's a gray gem, kind of like the least favorite colors of gems probably you can imagine, but they're still gems. And so these two planets are the course of us becoming gems. These are the two planets that lead us onward to emerge out of this fire-laden, starving humanity that does all kinds of brutalities and all kinds of unfairnesses upon each other, just out of sheer hunger, just out of sheer starvation. But once it's a gem, it stops. You know, once the gem has grown and emerged, there's no more heat. The gem is cool. It is what it is. It's beautiful in what it is. It's perfect in what it is. has a harmony to it in its crystal structure based on what it is. And that's what each of us as a human is learning to do, to grow out of this molten mass of starvation, of fire that just wants to burn, 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 into a refined, aligned gemstone with aligned crystal structure, with alignment within ourselves, with a composure within ourselves that's beautiful, that doesn't require the feeding off everything around us, the way the molten mass just constantly wants to burn, burn, burn. So Rahu and Ketu are the roads to that, because they're the gems. They're the gem in the chart. It's really a shocking statement for a parashar to tell us this about Rahu and Ketu. So the path of Rahu and Ketu is this gem. Okay? Now, the planets are our consciousness. So what's really being refined is our consciousness, right? All right? And the planets that are closest to Rahu and Ketu are the ones that are being refined the most in this lifetime, that have the most need of refinement, and the ones we're going to put the most energy into refinement. They're in the greatest, they're in the place of greatest stress where refinement is critical to them. Okay, otherwise they provoke us with misery and unhappiness. And this refinement leads them to become part of the gem process. This motivation they do helps us find our gem, help us come to terms with their Rahu and Ketu. So, I hope everyone can kind of appreciate the symbolism of that. But then Ketu is a black gem, and Rahu is a gray gem. As gems, they're wonderful things within us, but then one's black. Black gem is a gem you would not notice. A black gem is a gem you wouldn't see. Black has the symbology of absence, of the void, of emptiness. Okay? So, it's a gem that's seen as empty. And the Ketu position is very much like that. It really is something we have that's wonderful, that we feel a complete void about. We don't realize how wonderful our Ketu qualities are. The Ketu qualities haunt us, but they never feel good enough. They always feel like something's lacking. They literally feel like this black void. But yet they're a gem. And it's for us to realize over time that it is a gem. And then the planets that are closer to Ketu, of course, they're going to be occluded with that black gem. Okay? They're going to be occluded by that blackness of Ketu, let's say, a gem that emits no light. And that the result of that is that the planets that are closer to Ketu, and especially really close to Ketu and conjunct and everything, these are planets that we don't realize how good we're using those planets. We don't realize how wonderful those planets are serving us. We don't realize how wonderful the thing those planets are giving us, because the blackness of Ketu, the void that Ketu always feels, is obscuring just how wonderful those planets are, how really well those are functioning. So when you talk to people about their Ketu planets, you always want to emphasize, really to help them understand just how well they're actually using this planet. And that, while I not feel like they're using it great to them, they really need to learn to see that planet as they're actually using it. And they'll realize that they're using it much better than they realize. And if we can convey to the client just how wonderful and capable their Ketu planet is, but not to push that planet beyond the scope of its capabilities on planet Earth, that can help a person get a lot of peace. So you always want to teach that person to see a planet as a gem that's close to Ketu, though an obscured gem from their point of view. Okay, from their point of view, it's not a gem at all. It's just this black void. So we need to help them see that it's a gem. It's not a black void of a planet. Okay. Then Rahu is gray gems. Okay, what's gray symbolize? Well, gray, in nature, gray is the clouds. It's the mist. It's the fog. It's the inability to see past something. Okay. Ketu is just complete blackness. You can't see anything. So the planets with Ketu, we just don't see how good that planet is. We're completely black to it. It's like we might look at it, but it's so dark we can't even see it. Okay? So I might as well not even be there. And any planet with Ketu literally feels to the person like it's not even there. So you got a Ketu Sun conjunction, a Ketu Moon conjunction, whatever it is. You feel like that planet is just not there. But it is there, and it's very capable. From that person's point of view, they don't see it because it's too dark. Okay? Rahu, on the other hand, is gray. It's like misty. So it's gray, it's not clear. So gray light, let's think of gray light. That's dusk and dawn. That's when the most accidents happen, because with that gray light, we can't see clearly. Colors become diffused. We can't tell a red car from a square building, So things become diffused and unclear, and so we make mistakes. And that's what the quality of Rahu is. It's literally this place where there's something very valuable for us. It's part of us becoming the best thing we can be, becoming a gem, growing out of the molten mass of the starving humanity, and finding this gem, and it's part of that path, but it's gray, it's unclear, it's confused, we can't see clearly, so we make mistakes. We get into situations that we didn't foresee. Just like driving in the fog. That's literally what Rahu's like, okay? The planets with Rahu, and close to Rahu, are the very same way. With all those planets, we're sort of driving in the fog. They have a fogginess, an unclarity. We can see some of it, but we can't see all of it. We can see some, but it's never clear. So there's the confusion revolving around that planet, that unknowingness, that lack of certainty. But we see glimpses of it through the fog, okay? That we need to work towards and find. And as we get close to the object, it's just like going in the fog. Once you're right in front of the object, then it's clear. Then even in the fog, you can make sense of it. But as long as that you're not right face to face with that object, as long as it has any distance between you and that object, there'll be a confusion, a lack of clarity, a wonderment. What is this? Where am I going? What's this thing? Is it good for me? Is it bad for me? And you won't know until you're face to face with it. Okay? And oftentimes you'll see people come to us, come to astrologers and so on, when it has to do with anything revolving around the Rahu house, Rahu sign, or planets close to Rahu. Because they're seeing glimpses of something, but they can't see the clear picture. So they want advice. They want to say, is this a good job? Is this a good place for me to live? Is this a good person for me? Is this good? Is this a safe thing? Is it something I can trust? Because there's enough glimpses of something wonderful to them to attract them onward into the fog, but it's not clear enough for them to have any confidence in where they're going. It's just like driving down a foggy road. You just enough glimpses of the road to know you're on the road to somewhere, but it's not clear enough that you don't know if you're just going to plow into a boulder all of a sudden on the side of the road. So these planets with Rahu all have this fogginess revolving around them. And people who have a lot of planets close to Rahu are going to have more questions for the astrologer. They're going to come to astrologers more. The reason being because they're seeing lots of glimpses and they want clarity on these glimpses. The people who have more planets on the Ketu side, and this is a general statement, okay? They're going to be in the black. They won't know what to ask questions about. So they'll know something's missing, but they won't always have enough of a glimpse to go, what is that? And wonder about it and approach the astrologer as a result. However, that's not to say that certain planets close to Rahu won't motivate a person out of just sheer fear to go see an astrologer. Notably, the Moon and Saturn close to Rahu create a lot of fear and possible anxiety in a person that makes them want to just get some comfort and security from something the astrologer might say. Okay? But generally speaking, when people have specific questions about something, it's because they can't get the full clarity on something, and that's the Ketu sign. If people come for assurance and they're just scared, they just want to know something so they can feel better, then you'll want to see that'll be the result of lots of planets, Moon and Saturn on the Rahu side. But all other planets on the Rahu side incline a person to just have questions about these things because they can't see them clearly. They can't see where they're going with that thing. And they never will. It doesn't matter how many astrologers they go to, they won't be able to. There'll be too much, there will be confusion around that. They won't be able to get the straight answer. And so, until they encounter the thing so close that there's not enough fog to obscure their view of that thing, Can they really know what that thing means to them and what that thing is to them? And that's why we say Rahu deceives us. It's not that Rahu deceives us exactly. It's just like when you're driving in the fog, it's not like the road deceives you. The road is where it's always been. It's just you can't see the road. And so it's the same with Rahu. Okay, so keep those in mind as we those ideas in mind as you make interpretations for the planets. I'm trying to create a little bit of a formula here that you can take what you know about the planet and come up with your readings on the fly. Okay? Alright. Planets close to Ketu are able. So any planet with Ketu is able. A person can use that planet. They're used to using it. But they have an overly great need to be what they are in order for the individual to feel secure. So the planet has a huge need to be what it is, to be a big thing in the person's life in order for them to feel secure. This need is so great that it can't be fulfilled, and so the individual is always going to meet the need, is always trying to meet the need. And this creates many possible problems with the planet. So if you're trying to use a planet all the time, you're going to be using that planet in situations that planet's not designed for, and you're going to have problems, right? For instance, the sun is the first planet. So when Ketu's with the sun, a person needs to be first. Well, if you always need to be first, you're going to have problems in any situation where you're not first, right? Which means a lot of problems in a lot of situations. Really simple interpretation. So if you see a Ketu sun conjunction, you can just say to a person, and say Ketu's in a particular house, say they got a Ketu sun in the 5th house, and you can just say that, well, you always need to be the first in respect to your children. And they'll say, yeah, I have a lot of conflict with my husband or my wife when I raise my kids, because they need to be first all the time. Well, if they're first, they can't work in partnership with their husband to raise the kids, right? Really simple interpretation, but a truthful one. So, if we're always trying to fulfill a need of a planet that's close to Ketu or conjunct Ketu, the closer, the stronger this is, then, we're going to use that planet in situations it's not designed for. Every planet has its purpose, okay? Excuse me. Okay, so it'll create many possible problems with the planet. Some possibilities are over-controlling or over-expecting. If we have a great need for the security of a planet, we'll expect that planet to give us more than it's capable of, okay? And so with the Ketu house, we always have such high expectations that we can only be disappointed. Same with any planet conjunct. The sun is respected. Ketu with the sun needs to be respected. It needs to be respected to such a high degree that it's always going to end up feeling disrespected, and to some degree, and to a very painful degree to them. Okay. Always trying to meet, such as over-controlling or over-expecting. So over-controlling, I talk a lot about the over-controlling aspect in the Mastering Rahu Ketu course. So over-controlling, that means trying to use that planet with a tight rein, not giving that planet enough freedom to just operate naturally and spontaneously and healthily. Instead, it operates under a more controlled, on a short rein, and so it can't operate at its healthiest. If you over-control something, it's not going to perform well. So if you over-control your emotions, like a Ketu moon person does, your emotional body is not going to do well. If you over-control your children, they're going to be a mess when they grow up. If you over-control your spouse, you're going to ruin your relationship. If you over-control your dog, there's nothing you can over-control without screwing it up. But we're going to tend to want to over-control the things where Ketu is. Because remember, Ketu is the castle where everything has structure, everything has a way it has to be, there's a law for everything, you can't spit on the sidewalk, and da-da-da-da-da. So all the planets are overly regulated, overly controlled. Okay. So that's planets that are conjunct Ketu. So keep that in mind. Memorize those basic ideas. Really simple, not very many ideas there. Planets close to Rahu are scared they won't be what they are, or unable to get what they are. So the person doesn't feel they can be that planet successfully, or they don't feel that they can get that planet successfully. So the sun is first. I'm number one. I'm the first. I'm the top. Okay? I'm respected. So when Rahu's with the sun, a person doesn't feel like they can ever be first. They're scared they won't be first. Okay? Sometimes people who have a Rahu-Sun conjunction will have a very strange dream in various types, but this is one example. They might dream that when they get home, somebody is sleeping in their bed. Okay, now let's really think about that dream. Or they dream that when they get to work, someone's already taken their job. Anything where somebody beats them to something that's rightfully theirs. There's probably nothing more rightful in our life than our bed, right? It's just, our bed is a symbol of, that's my bed. That's where I sleep every night. There's a huge ownership we place on our bed, actually. Okay? So I think a bed is a really powerful symbol for, this is really mine, you know? So, you know, that's your space where you get to sleep in safety. You know, that's rightfully yours. And imagine a person who has a dream that when they get to their bed at the end of the day, somebody's in it. Someone else is there. So that's a huge fear of not getting, you know, not being in line to get their own, what's rightfully theirs. They're the first in their bed, right? But someone beat them to it. So a Rahu-Sun person very much feels like they're getting beat to something. They have a fear that they're going to be beat by the next person. They have a fear they're going to be beat in the job market. They have a fear someone's going to beat them to where it is their rightful place, to where their kingdom is, to what's rightfully theirs. And so as a result of that, they're always pushing and very aggressive. And when they think something's theirs, they just go for it without any care for other people. And this is all motivated because of this fear that if they feel they don't go for it with that level of intensity, they literally feel that someone else will take it from them, even though it has their name on it. Okay? We'll talk more about that. So that's a basic idea of how the Rahu works. They're scared they won't be what they are. So they won't be able to get that planet. That planet won't be able to be what it is. The sun is our kingdom. We all have our kingdom, right? And a Rahu-Sun person doesn't feel like they're going to get their kingdom. So they're pushing for their kingdom. And they want everyone to serve the needs of their kingdom. Why? Because they're so damn scared that they won't get it. Okay, why are they scared they won't get it? Because they can't clearly see their kingdom coming together. Okay, and of course, then they're scared. We're always going to be scared of Rahu because it's scary to drive in the fog, right? If anyone's ever driven in the fog, it's a scary experience, you know? You can see 10 foot in front of you and you turn your lights on, you can hardly see anything. You don't see the upcoming cars until they're about to smash into you. You know, you don't see where the side of the road is until you're 10 foot away from it. It's really nerve-wracking, scary stuff, and that's what Rahu is like. Okay. Or unable to get what they are. So a person might not think they can get what they want. The sun not get the respect. Venus not get the love and fulfillment and so on. Okay? So like Rahu-Venus people are notorious for being overly sexually active. Why? Because they have a fear they're never going to have love. They're never going to have sexual fulfillment. So when the opportunity is there, they're going to take it for sure. Because there's such a fear that they're not going to have it. And so they end up having it a lot. Because every possibility, opportunity for it, they take it. Okay. So they challenge the individual to live that planet in a healthy and fulfilling way. So there's a fear of not being able, not going to get it. And so the person ends up out of that fear to use the planet in an unhealthy way, like the Venus example I gave. Okay? It's unhealthy to take every opportunity for sexual involvement, because that is going to cause a person all kinds of problems and attachments, probably multiple children, possible disease, and possibly a lot of other people upset at them. So it's not a healthy use of that planet. Anything that we do out of a fear is never going to be used in a healthy way, right? So the person's challenged to use that in a healthy way, which means they're simply being challenged to use the planet without the fear. Okay, to remove themselves from the fear, to stand bravely in the face of the fear, not react to that fear, but instead to react in a way that works. So we don't have good luck with our Rahu planets because we react to those planets out of fear more so than we use those planets in a way that works. Okay? Alright, so that's simply it for that. And so as a person learns to use the Rahu planet in a healthy way, it becomes a fulfilling way. Alright? Otherwise, it can be very destructive, cause lots of problems, not just with that planet, but in all other areas of their life. Because when we have one problem, it kind of deteriorates the entirety of our lives. Okay, then. The Lajitati Avastha of the planet has much to say in respect to how much progress the person can make in using the planet in a healthier way. So, if the planet that's close to Rahu and Ketu is in a good Lajitati Avastha, the person's going to use that in a more healthy way naturally. It'll be easy for them to evolve and use that planet in a healthy way. A healthy way means a way that's fulfilling. Okay? Then, the yogas of the planet reveals how well they will use the planet insofar as having results with the planet. But that doesn't ensure fulfillment. So if they have a planet that has a yoga for wealth, yes, that planet will give them money. If it's a yoga for marriage, it'll give them marriage. If it's a yoga for this or that, doesn't matter. It'll give it to them. We say that Rahu and Ketu give the results of planets that aspect them and the results of planets they're with. So if Rahu's with the planet that's forming a yoga for, say, power and success, Rahu's going to help the person get that power and success. And yes, the power and success will come while they're driving down a very foggy road, and they'll not really know where they're going until they arrive there completely. So it'll have all those Rahu flavors to it. But they will have that power and success, and they will make more mistakes along the road to the power and success. But it doesn't guarantee they're going to be fulfilled with any of that power and success. The Lajitati Avastha answers that. So, for counseling purposes, for growth purposes, we need to focus on the Lajitati Avasthas of the planet. To see the circumstances, we have to look at the yoga. Is it a yoga for marriage? Okay, the circumstance is marriage. If it's a yoga for 3 marriages, the circumstances is a multiple marriage. If it's for no marriages, it's not going to have anything to do with marriage. If it's a wealth yoga or a strong wealth-giving planet, the circumstances that create all this growth are going to be having money. Okay? If it's a poverty yoga, the circumstances will be of being impoverished. Okay? So, yogas and Lajitati Avasthas are two very different things. The yogas simply indicate the circumstances of their life. The Lajitati Avasthas actually indicate the fulfillment. We talk a lot about karma, and good karma, bad karma, and all that stuff. And we often think of karma in very concrete forms, good karma, bad karma. Oh, in my last life I stole a lot of money, so in this lifetime I don't get any money. No, that's not how it works. Okay? If you stole a lot of money last lifetime, you thought that having money would be the road to fulfillment. So maybe in this lifetime you get so much money to realize that money doesn't give you any happiness at all, which is indicated by a bad Lajitati Avastha with good yogas for money. Okay, so I think the good and bad karma is actually shown by the Lajitati Avasthas. Because you can't consider having lots of money good karma if you're miserable. It's better karma to be poor and fulfilled, right? Because you're having a more happy life experience. So I think our good and bad karma manifests more, is shown, reflected in our Lajitati Avasthas. Are we fulfilled? Are we starved? How do we feel? How are we experiencing that thing? Okay? And then the circumstances are just the circumstance under which we're going to experience that in the yogas and the planetary permutations, the concrete events. And the Lajitati Avasthas, of course, have to do with our strategy. Okay? So, for instance, when you've got Jupiter starved, a person's strategy is enjoying a good material life is going to make me feel fulfilled and make me feel alive. Well, it won't. Okay? It's being creative and living in accordance with the inspiration within us that makes us feel alive. That's a delighted Jupiter. Okay? So, if a person thinks that a starved Jupiter will give fulfillment, they're going to make actions to, they're going to focus their inspirations on enjoying the material world, the material pleasures. And that's going to create an action that won't lead to fulfillment, because that won't fulfill that part of our being. That will fulfill the Venus part of our being. So it has its purpose, fulfillment and enjoying the good things of life. There's a planet that has that purpose. But we can't fulfill that purpose with Jupiter. for instance, or with the sun, for instance. Those planets have a different purpose, and only that purpose will fulfill them. So, the troubled Logitati Avastha shows a strategy, an action, a way of being that does or doesn't give fulfillment. And isn't that what karma is? Karma is action. Is the action rewarding or unfulfilling? That's the results of your karma, right? So we have to look at the Logitati Avasthas to see how, if what the person has done and is doing are going to provide fulfillment or not, which is the only good karma there is. Everything else is just situational and really not all that important, okay? So just because you see a person who's got a lot of good yogas being activated in their chart, whether they're close to Rahu and close to Ketu, whatever, that's just a situation under which they're going to have the karmic fulfillment of that planet indicated by the Logitati Avasthas. So when I work with Rahu and Ketu, I mostly just work with the Logitati Avasthas. I don't worry about the yogas, unless I need to predict an event or something like that, or unless I want to add some details and say, yeah, I can see, it's your habit, it's your way of being to have lots of money because you've got a wealth yoga in the second house from Ketu, and this is just something that feels familiar with you. But then I see that wealth yoga, the planets in it are starved, and I'm saying, but this is never giving you any fulfillment. And they might say, yeah, I grew up in a wealthy family, money's always been there, but I've never been happy. I should be happier with all that money and all the things it can give me, but I'm just not. So we can add some of the concrete details, but when it comes down to really seeing, is this planet being used in a way that's fulfilling, which means in a good karma way, or not, we need to really focus on the Logitati Avasthas, okay? But realize the yogas have their part to play too. And Rahu or Ketu aren't going to really affect the yoga or the Logitati Avastha unless it's causing an ashamed Avastha, okay? Because the yoga is just a circumstance under which a person's going to move towards their Rahu. But it's still going to be fogged. Okay? The yoga, that's with Ketu, is still going to be a yoga that's going to anchor them in their Ketu process. Okay? It's going to ultimately help them be in a situation that helps them learn to ultimately be okay with themselves. But it's still going to be something where they really don't see, because of the blackness of Ketu, how capable they are, because they're only seeing the void, what they're not achieving. Okay? So if you have a wealth yoga with Ketu, the person's capable of making wealth, they're creating wealth, but what they realize is not how much money is in their bank, but how much money is not in their bank account. Okay? Which is always a lot more money than is in their bank account. Because that's the nature of Ketu, to never really realize what we really have. Okay? To never appreciate fully what we have. That's what happens to the Ketu planets. Okay? Alright, so keep those things in mind as we look through as we go through these planets. I'm going to just talk about every planet conjunct Rahu Ketu, or close to Rahu Ketu. Always look at the planets in the same sign as Rahu and Ketu, and then look at the planets closest to them. Okay, especially if no planets with Rahu and Ketu, then find the closest planet to it and realize that's their most critical planet as influenced by Rahu and Ketu. So that's the one you have to talk about the most. And it helps a lot if that closest planet to Rahu and Ketu is a planet in good Avastha. Okay, that'll make their lives easier. Okay, and then in my examples I'm going to give, or in the interpretations I'm going to give, I will talk about, I will just arbitrarily grab some ideas about the planets and show how to do this. But I'm not going to cover every possibility of every planet, because planets represent so many things. I'm just going to cover whatever pops into my head and have fun with it, the way I would in a reading. And I want you to understand the process. I want you to use your knowledge about the planets, the things you know about the planets, the things you read in Graha Sutras and so on, to just come up with your interpretations for the person using these ideas. And if you want like a more lengthy, this is how this planet is, conjunct this Rahu or Ketu, go to the Mastering Rahu and Ketu course for that, because those are good interpretations that you'll find very, very useful. Okay, thank you.